Maggie Sullivan had always assumed that if her marriage ended, it would come after some long, tearful conversation, maybe in a quiet restaurant over half-finished wine or in the stillness of their shared apartment with one of them packed and ready. She never imagined it would come by text message on a Wednesday morning while she was still in her pajamas waiting for her coffee to finish brewing. The phone buzzed once on the kitchen counter. She glanced down, expecting some random work update or a promo ad. The apartment was eerily quiet like it knew. She stood up and moved through each room. His coat was gone from the hook, the bottom drawer where he kept his running shoes empty. In the bathroom, his razor and toothbrush had vanished. Her side of the bed still bore the indent from where she had slept. His side looked untouched, as though he had vanished into thin air. She walked back into the kitchen in a daze, everything sharp and blurry at the same time. The sink still held last night's dinner plates. Rob had always liked control. From the beginning, he handled the finances because, as he once put it, "You're the creative one, babe, let me deal with the boring stuff." And she'd agreed, trusted him, believed that love meant surrendering some things, but over time his tone had shifted from loving to condescending. "We can't all afford to play artist forever," he once said when she brought up quitting freelance gigs to build her own studio. Maggie grabbed her laptop, pulled it onto the table, and stared at the screen for a long time. She didn't know what she was looking for, maybe emails, clues, signs, but there was nothing, just a paper trail of normalcy leading right up to his cowardly exit. She opened a new document and stared at the blinking cursor, then she started typing, not a letter to him, but a list. The rent was due in 12 days. Her next freelance payout was 2 weeks away. Tears welled up, but she refused to cry. Not yet, not when she had calls to make. She grabbed her phone and dialed the only person she could think of, Liv, her best friend since college. Liv answered on the second ring. "Hey, Mags, what's up?" "He's gone," Maggie whispered. "Rob's, he left, he took everything." There was a beat of silence, then Liv's voice, calm and solid. "You're coming here, pack a bag, I'm on my way." By nightfall, Maggie was curled up on Liv's couch, a suitcase by the door and her laptop balanced on her knees. She hadn't eaten all day. Liv brought her tea and didn't ask for details. Maggie was grateful for that. Later, when the apartment went quiet, she sat in the dim light and stared at her screen. She opened her old design files, logos, mock-ups, pitch decks, half-finished remnants of a dream she'd shelved. For Rob, for their so-called life plan. She opened Instagram. Her old design page was still live, though barely active. 312 followers, a dusty portfolio. She clicked edit profile, changed her bio to freelance designer, building again, and posted a new photo, a clean minimal brand board she'd made for a coffee shop last year. Then she opened Fiverr, then Upwork, then Canva, then Notion. For hours, she clicked, uploaded, designed, and rebuilt. It was 3:11 a.m. when she finally shut her laptop. And now she was going to build something so good, so sharp, so unmistakably hers, that the man who tried to erase her would one day wish he'd never touched the canvas. Maggie didn't wake up the next morning to birdsong or gentle optimism. She woke up on a lumpy couch with a stiff neck, the city traffic groaning through Liv's thin apartment walls and her inbox already blinking with freelance requests she could barely keep up with. But there was something strange in that exhaustion. It felt productive, purposeful. For the first time in years, her life wasn't being lived to orbit someone else's. She was broke, bruised, and betrayed, yes, but also in motion. Live, ever the anchor, set boundaries Maggie hadn't realized she needed. "You can live here until you're back on your feet," she said, "but you will take breaks, you will go outside, and you will let yourself feel this, not just fix it." And so Maggie tried. She journaled, she cried in the shower, she ate pizza with Liv on the fire escape and let herself laugh again. But every night when Liv went to bed, Maggie stayed up building, sketching, researching, creating. She reached out to past clients, small restaurants, indie bookshops, yoga studios, and sent short, honest emails. "I'm back. If you need anything refreshed, I'd love to work with you again." To her surprise, many replied with warmth, some even sent referrals. She created a shared folder of testimonials, started building her new brand guide, and registered a domain, Sullivan Creative Studio. No LLC yet, no investors, but a name, her name. By the end of week 2, Maggie had completed 4 client projects and had a waiting list of 6 more. The money wasn't much, but it was moving. She made a spreadsheet of every incoming cent. It became a ritual, a reminder that she was still standing. Then one afternoon, a woman named Renata messaged her through Instagram. She owned a boutique skincare line and needed a brand revamp fast. They hopped on a call. Renata was sharp, kind, and blunt. Somewhere in the middle of all this, Maggie bought a second-hand standing desk off Facebook Marketplace, moved it into Liv's kitchen nook, and started calling it the office. She hung a tiny print above it that read, "Start ugly, finish strong." Every time she sat down, she whispered it under her breath like a prayer. She had bad days, of course. Some mornings, she woke up feeling like an imposter. Some nights, she dreamed Rob was back, asking for forgiveness with that fake grin he used when dodging responsibility. But she didn't text him, didn't stalk his socials, didn't give him air in her new world. Instead, she watered her work. She leaned into the silence he left behind and filled it with her voice. By the end of month 1, she'd made $4,680. It was more than she'd made in some entire quarters. Liv cried when Maggie handed her the first rent check. "Not because of the money," she said, "but because you did this with nothing and you didn't ask for permission." One night long after Liv had gone to bed, Maggie stood in front of her laptop and refreshed her inbox. A message had come through. The subject line read, Creative Partnership Opportunity. It was from a women-led wellness startup based in Portland. They'd found her through Renata's post. They wanted a full-scale branding package, logo, typography, packaging, web design, the kind of job that could launch a studio, the kind of job that would have terrified her a month ago. Maggie stared at the screen, heart racing. She didn't think about Rob, she didn't think about what he took, she thought about what she was building. She clicked reply, smiled, and started typing. She was no longer rebuilding. She was rising. By the time October rolled around, Maggie Sullivan had transitioned from survival mode into a quiet, focused storm of momentum. Her mornings began with the same ritual: tea in her favorite ceramic mug, a glance at her goals board, and a quick scroll through her DMs, which were now filled with inquiries, praise, and collaboration offers. She didn't have a studio yet, but the name Sullivan Creative Studio was already gaining traction. Renata's endorsement had been a lightning rod. Not only did it elevate Maggie's visibility, but it also connected her to an ecosystem of women-led brands hungry for bold, meaningful design. In a single month, she onboarded 7 new clients, including a wellness retreat in Arizona and a rising beauty YouTuber rebranding her merch line. Word traveled. It was during one of her late-night work sprints that she received a message from Naomi Fisher, a well-known startup founder with over 200,000 followers on LinkedIn. Naomi had seen Maggie's designs through a reshared story and wanted to hop on a call. Maggie took the meeting at Liv's kitchen table with her laptop elevated on a stack of cookbooks. Naomi was cool, poised, and wore bold red lipstick that matched her brand. After the call, Maggie stood up, walked into the bathroom, and stared at herself in the mirror for a full 2 minutes. Her reflection looked different. Her shoulders were squared. Her eyes had a steel focus. She whispered, "You're doing it, Mags, you really are." With Naomi's partnership came a new level of exposure. Her work was now part of high-profile launches, pitch decks being reviewed by venture capitalists, and influencer kits sent to celebrities. She hired a part-time admin assistant named Joy, a quiet powerhouse who organized Maggie's growing client base and helped with onboarding. She started thinking about hiring a junior designer. And then, just as the gears were turning faster than ever, Rob resurfaced. It came in the form of a voice message. Not an email this time, not a text. His voice, that familiar, practiced calm, slid into her inbox like a ghost from another life. "Hey Mags, I know it's been a while. I'm back in town and I've been hearing about you. Congrats on everything. I guess I just wanted to say I'm proud of you and I miss us. I'd love to talk." She stared at the message, heart pounding, not because she missed him, but because of how little it rattled her. A few months ago, it would have cracked her open. Now it just felt sad, predictable, like a man reaching backward while she was sprinting forward. She didn't reply. Instead, she walked into Liv's room and said, "I think it's time I found my own place." Within a week, she signed a lease for a small but sunny 1-bedroom loft on the east side, exposed brick, tall windows, and just enough space for a real desk. She bought furniture secondhand, arranged everything with care, and on move-in day, Liv arrived with champagne and a plant in a ceramic pot shaped like a lion. "For strength," she said. They toasted under the warm light of Maggie's new beginning. Her first night alone in the new space was quiet. She lit a candle, played her build mode playlist, and worked until her eyes blurred. At midnight, she stepped onto the tiny balcony and looked out over the rooftops. It wasn't a skyline yet, but it was hers. Every inch earned, every crack filled with her own light. Business continued to swell. She redesigned her website again, more refined this time. She took new headshots, updated her bio, and added a new tagline, "Branding with Backbone." People loved it. She was invited onto 2 podcasts and a virtual panel for women founders. During the panel, one of the hosts asked, "What would you tell your past self, the version of you who just got that message?" Maggie paused, then answered slowly, "I'd tell her, he left you with nothing, but that's only because he didn't see how much you were carrying." The comments section flooded with hearts. Around that time, she got an email from an agency in San Francisco looking for a design director for a short-term campaign. The rate was high, the deadline tight. Maggie negotiated it without blinking. She didn't feel like an imposter anymore. She felt like someone in the exact right room. And yet, as she climbed, she stayed grounded. Every Friday, she carved out 3 hours for pro bono work, helping women-owned startups, single mom creators, and high school students building portfolios. It reminded her of where she came from, of what mattered. Then one rainy Saturday, while organizing her invoices, Maggie saw it again. Another email, from Rob. This time the subject line read, "I'm sorry, I messed everything up." She clicked it not because she wanted him back, but because she deserved to read the whole truth. The email was long, rambling. He talked about his job falling apart, the woman he left her for leaving him, his finances drying up. He said he was sleeping on a friend's couch, that he thought about her every day, that he missed her laugh, that he regretted everything. Maggie read the entire thing, took a breath, and then archived it. She stood, stretched, and poured herself a glass of water. She looked around her apartment, sunlight filtering through the rain, plants lining the windowsill, her calendar filled with names of women she admired and clients who respected her. She smiled. He had no idea who she had become. And he never would. The morning she signed the lease for her first real studio space, Maggie Sullivan didn't celebrate with champagne or confetti. She sat alone on the floor in the middle of the empty, sunlit room and cried. Not because she was sad, but because the moment finally felt real. The floors were unfinished concrete, the walls still needed painting, and the windows rattled when the wind blew hard. But it was hers. She spent the next 2 weeks transforming the space. Not with a big team or fancy decorators, but with her own hands and the help of Liv, who showed up with 2 cans of paint, a toolbox, and a playlist titled "You Built This." They patched cracks, painted the walls eggshell white, and built desks out of reclaimed wood. Maggie sourced furniture from Craigslist, thrift shops, and one lucky estate sale where she found a leather armchair that looked like it belonged in a novelist's cabin. That post went viral. The comments poured in, strangers cheering her on, fellow designers sharing their own rebuild stories, and even a few offers for collaborations. Overnight, her story became something bigger than her, proof that rock bottom wasn't the end. It was a beginning. Business grew faster than she could keep up. Joy officially came on full-time, followed by a junior designer named Malik, fresh out of art school but bursting with energy and ideas. The 3 of them formed a rhythm: morning check-ins, coffee-fueled brainstorming, playlists humming in the background while they designed packaging, digital campaigns, and full brand systems for startups, nonprofits, and even a boutique record label. Maggie found herself in new rooms, new conversations, and new opportunities that would have once terrified her. She spoke at a design conference in Brooklyn, was featured in an editorial for a major women's business magazine, and received a nomination for an entrepreneurship award she didn't even know existed. And yet, through it all, she stayed grounded. She still made time every week to take a walk to the lake, to answer pro bono design questions from young women just starting out, to FaceTime her mom on Sundays even when she was drowning in edits. She still made mistakes, overbooked once, accidentally sent a draft to the wrong client, cried in the bathroom when a campaign flopped, but she learned. She adjusted, she kept going. Then came the day Rob showed up in person. It had been nearly 10 months since he left. Maggie was reviewing mock-ups with Malik when Joy buzzed her from the front desk. "There's a man here, says his name is Rob Sullivan. Do you want to see him?" The room fell silent. Maggie stared at the intercom like it had spoken in another language. Her chest tightened, but her voice didn't waver. "Send him in." He walked in with that familiar saunter, hair shorter, suit more rumpled than she remembered, eyes carrying a weight she hadn't seen before. He looked older, thinner, like the years had not been kind. Or maybe it was just that Maggie had outgrown the lens she used to see him through. He stood in the middle of the studio, taking it all in: the open layout, the framed testimonials on the wall, the soft hum of success in the air. "Wow," he said, "you really did it." Maggie nodded. "I did." There was a long pause. He fumbled with his hands. I don't know what I was thinking walking away like that. I thought I needed freedom. I thought you'd be fine, maybe even better off. But then I saw your name in that article, and I realized I was wrong." Maggie looked at him for a long time, not with hatred, not even with bitterness, but with distance. "I wasn't fine," she said. "I was devastated. You humiliated me. You left me with nothing and didn't even say it to my face. But yes, I got better, not because of you, because of me." He looked down. "I know I don't deserve anything from you. I just wanted to say it. I'm sorry." She crossed her arms. "Thank you for that, but let's be clear, you don't get to be part of this now. You left when I was at my worst, and I built this, every inch of it, without you." Rob nodded slowly. "I get it, I really do." Joy appeared at the door. "Everything all right?" Maggie didn't take her eyes off him. "Everything's perfect." Rob gave a half smile, the kind that used to disarm her. It didn't anymore. He turned and walked out. Maggie stood still for a moment, breathing it in. The closure, the clarity, the power of her own voice filling the room. Malik walked over and nudged her gently. "Want to go over those mood boards?" She smiled. "Yeah, let's do it." And just like that, she turned back to her desk, not because she had anything to prove, but because she had everything to build. And no one could take that from her ever again. By the time spring rolled in, the air in Maggie's studio smelled of eucalyptus and ambition. The old gallery space had taken on a life of its own, alive with color palettes pinned to walls, mood boards taped to glass, half-finished mock-ups spread across desks, and the steady soundtrack of clicking keyboards and low conversation. Maggie had just wrapped a branding project for a national sustainable clothing company, and the campaign had gone viral for its bold, inclusive aesthetic. What had started as an act of survival had become something more, a movement. Clients didn't just hire Sullivan Creative for good design. They came for her story, for her clarity, for the fire behind her work. Maggie began mentoring other women in creative industries, especially those rebuilding after breakups, business failures, or emotional wipeouts. She never framed herself as a hero, just as someone who had chosen not to disappear. It was during one of these mentorship sessions, over coffee at a corner cafe with a young illustrator named Brenna, that Maggie received an email from a talent agency. They represented a major streaming platform launching a documentary series on women entrepreneurs. The producer had heard about Maggie through the founder of the wellness startup she'd branded months ago. They wanted to feature her as one of the primary stories. Maggie read the message 3 times before calling Liv. "I'm going to be on Netflix," she said, voice shaking. Liv screamed into the phone, "You better start moisturizing your camera face, babe, you're going global." The filming began a month later. A small crew followed her for a week, capturing her studio, her team, her meetings, and her rituals. They even filmed a segment at Liv's apartment where it all began. Maggie stood in front of the worn couch, eyes glassy. "This is where I remembered who I was," she said quietly, touching the armrest, "and where I decided to become who I am now." The episode aired 6 months later and trended for a week straight. Maggie's following tripled. Her studio was booked out for the rest of the year. She had to hire 3 more team members and bring in an operations manager. She signed a lease for a larger office 2 floors up from her original one and kept the old studio as a creative lab for interns and community projects. Sullivan Creative Studio became not just a business, but a landmark. Then one evening, as the sun dipped low and the studio buzzed with final edits on a campaign for a Paris-based fashion label, Joy came to her with an odd look on her face. "There's someone at the door," she said gently. "Says he's here for you, says you won't know him, but you will." Maggie stepped out, heart steady. At the door stood a man she didn't recognize at first, tall, older, his suit clean but his expression tired, almost fragile. He held a small box. "I'm Rob's father," he said. "Rob Sullivan, my son, I know this is strange. He asked me to give this to you." She took the box carefully. It was small, wooden, hand-carved. She hadn't seen or heard from Rob in nearly a year, not since he'd walked out of her studio looking like a man chasing his past. The man hesitated. "He passed away 2 weeks ago, car accident, out of state. He talked about you a lot near the end, said you were the last person who ever truly knew him, and the only one who never needed him." Maggie stood frozen. A strange grief spread through her, not a mourning for the man, but for the version of herself that had once waited for his apology. She thanked him, gently declined his invitation to the memorial, and returned to her office. When the door shut behind her, she opened the box. Inside was a stack of old Polaroids, photos she'd forgotten existed, their first apartment, her first design sketches. A letter in Rob's handwriting sat on top. It wasn't long, just 3 lines. "I was never strong enough to build anything, but you were, and you did. Thank you for showing me what that looked like." She read it once, then folded it and placed it at the back of her desk drawer. That night she walked the city alone. She didn't cry, she didn't feel vindicated. What she felt was a strange kind of freedom, the final kind, the release of someone else's narrative that had once weighed down her own. When she returned to the studio, the team was gone for the night. The lights were soft, the room still. She walked to the corkboard and pinned a new quote above her desk, one she'd found earlier that week in a poetry book by a woman who'd rebuilt her life too. It read, "I am not what was done to me, I am what I did with it." Maggie stepped back, looked around the room, and smiled. Everything here had once been broken, and now it was whole. Not perfect, but undeniably hers. It was nearly a year to the day since Maggie Sullivan had received the text message that detonated her old life. And now, standing in the center of a sun-filled event space downtown, she was surrounded by people raising glasses in her honor. The new Sullivan Creative headquarters had just opened, a renovated warehouse turned modern design haven, all glass, steel beams, greenery, and clean lines that echoed everything Maggie had fought for. As the event hummed around her, someone handed her a microphone and urged her to say a few words. She stepped onto the small platform set beneath a minimalist sign, Sullivan Creative Studio branding with backbone. The room quieted, all eyes turned to her. Maggie took a breath, and for the first time in this long journey, she wasn't nervous. She was steady, rooted. "I used to think I had to build my life around someone else's version of success," she began, her voice calm but resolute. "I thought being loved meant staying small to keep someone else comfortable, that trusting someone meant giving them all the power. But then one day I got a message that told me I'd been left behind, that everything we built was gone, and that I was on my own. And for a while, I believed I was nothing without that life." She paused, the room was still. A few people had tears in their eyes, others nodded quietly. "I didn't rebuild," she said. "I reinvented, I didn't bounce back, I rose up, not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally chose myself." The applause was long and loud. Maggie stepped off the platform with Liv waiting to hug her at the bottom step. "You killed that," Liv whispered. "That was straight fire." Over the next few hours, Maggie spoke with investors, hugged former clients, posed for photos, and even danced a little. But somewhere near the end of the night, she found a moment to step outside into the cool evening air alone. She leaned against the railing of the terrace overlooking the skyline, letting the silence settle in. Her phone buzzed, a simple text from her mom. "Saw the live stream, your father would be so proud." Maggie smiled. There had been times she didn't think her family would understand this version of her, but they had come around, not because she had succeeded in the traditional sense, but because she had never compromised her core, she had stayed true. She stayed out there on the terrace for a while reflecting, so much had changed. Her studio was now a team of 12 with clients in 5 countries and a waitlist 6 months long. She had turned down offers to sell because this business wasn't just a brand, it was a life reclaimed, a mirror of her resilience. She was mentoring women around the world now, speaking at global events, and had recently signed a deal to write a book about creative recovery and rediscovery. She still remembered the night she slept on Liv's couch, staring at a ceiling fan that clicked with every turn, wondering how she would ever be okay again. And now she had built more than a business. She had built proof that being abandoned wasn't the end, proof that emotional wreckage could be reimagined as a foundation. A gentle breeze swept across the terrace as she looked down at the street below. Somewhere out there were women just like her, just beginning their fall, just reading their first betrayal, just checking their empty accounts. And maybe one day one of them would find her story not to copy but to remember they weren't alone, that they could rise too. She whispered to the sky, not sure who she was saying it to, maybe herself, maybe the girl she used to be, maybe someone else just beginning their rebuild. You're going to be more than okay, you're going to become everything. The wind carried it away. Back inside, her team had begun cleaning up, laughing over leftover wine and packing up gift bags. Joy handed her a small box. One last gift, she said, came in from someone anonymous. Maggie opened it. Inside was a simple silver compass pendant with a note. You always knew where you were going, even when he left. No name, no sender. She smiled, fastened the necklace around her neck, and rejoined the party. Because that was the thing now, Maggie Sullivan didn't just survive the text that shattered her world. She built a world no one could take from her again. And she wasn't done building yet.